Lewis Hamilton is not the world champion in 2021. Max Verstappen takes his first championship at the ripe old age of 24 years old. Michael Massey is the man in focus, in or out of the bin, depending on where you sit. And Kimi Räikkönen retires as driver of the day at the end of an incredible career. G'day there, my name is James Baldwin and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we review the championship deciding, last lap deciding, we could have put the rest of the season in the bin, seems we only needed one lap, race at Abu Dhabi. And I'm joined, as always, by my friends and yours, the very, very happy Dutchman, Tommy T. G'day, mate.
G'day, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And Campy, hello, man.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Yes, slightly sleep deprived, all three of us are. I tried to watch as much of the post-race as I could, so only a handful of hours of sleep, but well worth it because this was one hell of a ride, although it didn't start that way. But before we get into talking about the Grand Prix and what ended up happening, a bit of a shout out to someone who's left us a review. First of all, they say, what a show. How funny are these guys? 5 stars, taking the piss out of the drivers, the teams and themselves. Best F1 podcast, the length of the Flemington Straight. Tune in to hear Campy's words of wisdom, such as if there's meat on the table or the classic 2 doesn't go into 3. Channel 31 needs to take the rights off Foxtel and get these guys into the commentary box. Massive thank you to you for that. And before, of course, we go to talking about the Grand Prix, it is time to talk about the television broadcast review. And there was a lot of broadcast to review, Tommy T.
Lot of broadcasting, wasn't there? I suppose like we talk about the little featurette things they did. There wasn't much really. There was the little Kimi feature of him just stacking a, what was it, Polaris little whatever thing in the sand dunes.
Yep.
That was probably a highlight. We had Karoon's lap around with Damon. That was interesting where he was taking credit for everything that was changed.
Yep.
So I wanted this and I just changed it over and we only
shovel and wheelbarrow Karoon.
Yeah, exactly. But to be honest, I think the whole weekend I was just so sick of the way it was framed, the championship battle and just trying to get everyone to play off each other and how they thought. I suppose they were speculating from the start that there was going to be an incident and there was going to be contact and there was going to be dirtiness somehow from the Max Verstappen side of things and how Lewis is Sir Lewis and can do no wrong. And he's just, I think the struggle is obviously that we watch the Sky broadcast. So obviously it's framed that way. I think the only kind of one that I felt was neutral enough was Jensen, who is probably the one that's the most British. I don't know. Like even Nico was backing his old teammate and it was a struggle to watch how Lewis focused it was and how anti-Max it almost felt.
And were you personally attacked again, being a Dutchie?
I definitely was.
Yeah,
there definitely felt personally attacked. It was confusing.
You Dutchies are bloody precious, aren't you?
Definitely
and protective.
No, I think because as soon as you zoom out and you see anything from the world side of point of view, it's like, yay, Max, all this kind of stuff. But just every time it's framed elsewhere, it's like, oh, well, have you considered this about Max? And don't forget this. And there's all these kind of negative things thrown around. So it wasn't as exciting as I would have liked to prep going into this epic race that we had.
Yeah, as I said at the top, interesting that we've had the entire season so many races and everything didn't matter. We could have just had the first lap at Bahrain and whoever was the end of that, done. Right, move on with the season. Let's just go to the bar. Kimi Räikkönen would have preferred that, I think, for the whole of the season.
For sure.
But, it really...
over though, Jim.
It really turned it on. Yeah, look, I was going to say, from a broadcast point of view, the flyover was glimpsed at. I couldn't even tell if it was a Boeing 787 or an Airbus A350, and I am a plane spotter. People know me, know that is the case. And I was like, yes, here we go. And normally they have like a helicopter that'll do an aerial shot above. The aerial shot was like a good 15 seconds, 20 seconds after the aircraft had disappeared and completely buggered off. And of course, because the TV director's like, no, we need to focus on Lewis Hamilton. And that was it. There was no other kind of attention. So the flyover, as always at Abu Dhabi, is great because they get an Etihad jet and their team of flyover jets as well. And it always looks good and nice little straight.
Let alone the flyover throughout the whole weekend when they're just trying to talk.
Yes.
And every other jet flying over.
That's A+ to whoever the pilot is, just wanting. But that's classic fighter pilot attitude. Give me attention. Give me attention. That's all they do. They're not doing anything else, are they?
It's just this jet stream.
So, look, from a flyover point of view, probably a solid 7.5 out of 10. And the reason it doesn't get more points is because we didn't see what else happened. But to fly a jet that close in terms of a passenger aircraft that close to the ground with, a little formation behind is always very cool and interesting to watch, I think. What about the national anthem for you, Campy? We had some Etihad hosts holding the flag too.
Yeah, pre-recorded, so I don't like that. We definitely need something live, a little live orchestra or band playing. Yeah, it was a dud, wasn't it? It was no good.
It's not about it.
Can't win them all.
No, that's very true. Can't have just the Russian national anthem playing all the time. Tommy T, what's your score out of 10 then?
I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 for the anti-Dutchness of it.
Yeah. I would suggest
precious,
maybe
precious.
An extra 0.23 of a point for just how long they went for. I just caught up on the last the last hour or so of the broadcast, but also an additional 400 points because Sky F1 was nice enough to share their live broadcast with Channel 4 in the UK. So you didn't actually have to pay for a subscription in the UK cool. If you were to watch the grand final, the finale, I should say. Which is good by them. It was a nice, good guy move by them, which was good. Let's talk about Formula 2 as well, Campy. Oscar Piastri bloody just sending it off in style, didn't he?
Feature race, yes. Very cool, calm and collected. Led from the front. Whole race, circumnavigated his pit stop well. Came out, started on the softs, I believe, and then went on to the hards or the mediums, whatever that strategy was. Excellent for his last race. Got a win. Showed his dominance. Joe was good too. He finished in P2 after a good start. He had a really good battle with Jack Doohan on lap 1, and Jack Doohan put it in the wall, unfortunately for us Aussie fans. But
not doing good things there.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shame. I think he just came back onto the circuit after going off, and his front end twitched, a bit like what we saw from Leclerc's get off last night, his little off-track excursion. So not good when you're in a single-seating racing car. Anyway, look, stoked for Oscar. Just capped off what a fine season it's been. In his interviews, what a cracking little fella too. He needs to give us a bit more banter, but he's a young professional little kid trying to get into F1, and he's doing all the right things at the moment, so it's exciting for us fans. I really want to see him in the car next year as much as possible. But he alluded to himself, and we made that joke yesterday that he'll be king of the couch next year probably. So Discord talked about him possibly racing in S5000 in Australia next year just to get him some track time. But realistically, that'll probably clash with a lot of the calendar for next year. Yeah. But he'll be working very hard. He'll be a full-time employee of that Alpine team next year, and hopefully they can get him in a car somewhere else doing some other things, maybe test some previous F1 cars and machinery. So
some work would be cool.
Work. Yeah. Get him in a test car next year at one of the test days as well. That'd be good for him.
Well, he's testing today and tomorrow as well.
Season, So that's, great for us fans moving forward, and we've still got someone to watch in the junior categories next year too. So it's all things looking Aussie in F1, so it's good.
Yeah, it is a shame, of course, if you haven't listened to our pre-drinks podcast yet. Shout out to Freya, also being the only Dutchie in the bar or the whatever meat smokehouse she was watching the race in, being the only fan of Max Verstappen in amongst Lewis Hamilton fans. I feel like there would be inverse versions of that in the Netherlands as well.
Did you see that picture of the guy with the top knot that she was watching it with?
Yeah, that was
horrible.
That's worse than Giovinazzi. But yes, anyway, interesting time for Oscar Piastri. As I said at the very end, though, of the Pre-Drinks podcast, if Lewis was going to win, he'd retire and Oscar would go to Mercedes. Well, I'll put that idea in the bin because we'll take my tinfoil beanie off there.
Yeah.
Can place it in the bin, and then I will get it back out again as we talk about what actually bloody happened on this Grand Prix evening. It started out with a bit of a bang, and then it was very boring in the middle. And then Nicholas Latifi confirmed his Red Bull sponsorship for 2022, probably driving for AlphaTauri in 2023. An interesting time. Of course, we'll go through our team-by-team analysis, except for probably Haas, although they aren't the last team that we'll talk about. But let's just dive straight on into this, lads, because the last lap was the most important, wasn't it? And it almost doesn't matter where you sit on the fence here. The race is done. As we just started recording this, the decision was made that there was no appeal was going to go through from Mercedes, and so it is how it is. Max Verstappen, world champion in 2021. How do we feel about it, though, overall, Campy? We'll start with you, and we'll get into a little bit of the detail exactly around what the protest was about as well.
Look, love the fact that Max won. That, for me, is awesome. Did I want him to win like that? Absolutely not. Am I shattered for Lewis? Because, yes, I'm not the biggest Lewis fan, and he gives me the shits all the time, the way he handled himself out of the car. But to see what he did last night and the last four races for the championship to end in the way it did, above and beyond, I'm a fan of this sport, and I think without drivers aside, I'm utterly disappointed that our sport would decide a world championship the way that it went down. I just think Massey's a dickhead. He's in the bin. His incompetence at making decisions on the fly has to be a question. I think his job's untenable. Although they alluded to the fact in the commentary after the report that Massey's a good guy, and anyone, who else would you put in? I don't have those answers. All I know is that the inconsistencies that we've talked about all year from Michael Massey and the stuff that's gone on track came to a head last night, and as a fan of the sport, I don't like the way it was decided. So the whole thing is cooked.
It's interesting because either way it went, half the world was going to hate Michael Massey regardless of the decision that was made, regardless of any kind of, interesting, I suppose, sort of looking at trying to launch this appeal, because it almost didn't really matter because the Dutch side of the world hated him from the first lap. Tommy T, of course, with that incident going down the back straight. And, I suppose as Campy just said there's a lot of inconsistency that the FIA has to look at this year in terms of they've had to deal with it. We've mentioned this on this podcast. You've mentioned this in terms of how the stewards make their decisions and how having completely different stewards each weekend is not necessarily the best thing. But from your point of view, bring your Dutch bias to the front. We're happy to have it. From your point of view,
should be wearing orange, shouldn't I?
How did you see all of that?
All of it. I think quickly on the first lap incident, I think it was a late move, but it was a move that was inevitable, and Lewis knew that move was coming. He's an idiot if he didn't think it was coming for a lunge. The issue was the lasting advantage that he gained, and I don't know where the time was given back. He seemed to go off into the sunset, as Campy would say, and he just drove off and extended his advantage, I think was the issue. But move on. I think that's just the inconsistencies we've seen throughout the year. So I don't think Mercedes did anything to give back that advantage. But having said that, I still think that Merc would have had the pace throughout that race anyway, regardless. I think he would have managed to get back in front and do whatever. So kind of a moot point. But I think from Max's side of things, he did everything he possibly could throughout that race at every opportunity. He took every risk and did everything he possibly could. I get what you're saying, Campy, but also I would hate to see that championship end under yellow flag, and I think that would have been the worst thing. I was campaigning for and yelling with Dad on the couch as soon as it happened. I was like, red flag it, get them both on fresh tyres. Let's just do this with a little 6 laps to go, and just like let's have a proper sprint to the end with both fresh tyres. We'll get to have a start. Like I think that just would have been a fairer way to do it rather than this giving, say, Max the advantage or giving Lewis the advantage under safety car. I think that was probably preferable, and we've seen red flag for less, so it wouldn't have been uncommon for this season to end with a red flag and kind of do it that way. I get what you're saying, mate, but like I would be so disappointed to see this end under a yellow flag and just a parade around for the end of the race, and Max have no opportunity to actually finish in a race to actually race his opponent.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day...
Sorry, you go, Jim.
No, at the end of the day, Michael Massey's job is safety, right? It doesn't actually matter about the World Drivers' Championship for him, and nor should it. I know that there would have been the world of pressure. Something else I want to talk about in just a moment too is the lobbying, the significant lobbying that was being done by team principals, like directly, including a button. There's a directed dump button from Toto to Michael of must just say whinge, and Christian Horner must have one as well because it's not good as far as I'm concerned. That's an unnecessary step. He can, have his 400th pair of Bose headphones for the race if that's what he needs to get through it. But that's no good.
We don't need to hear it as fans because it makes it look worse for us.
Exactly. Yeah, and look, I'm sure it had happened before we had this direct audio feed, and that's okay. But his job is safety. And, I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but when I spoke with Scott Elkins, who is in that world as well, he said very clearly, our job is about safety. We don't really care about anything else. That, the FIA employ us to do that and keep everyone safe. So long as, Latifi was safely off the track in terms of himself, so long as the car was safely out of the way, that's all good. I think what Campy said in terms of his Michael Massey's decision-making, certainly one thing that he has to work on, at least with the radio messages that we can hear, is how he communicates clearly to these teams. We saw it last weekend, didn't we, in Jeddah, in terms of the give the position back issue that went on, in terms of how that was communicated. But at the end of the day, if the race finishes under a safety car, it finishes under a safety car because, the most important thing is the drivers are safe. And yes, that would be a boring end to the season. Will we be disappointed with that? Absolutely, we would have done. But I think this jeopardy of, righto, it's only the cars that are between Lewis and Max can overtake so we can get some racing, is also a bit of spicy chili Michael Massey that we haven't seen this year either. That's almost like a bit of V8 supercars. Are there any rules to this?
We've had 54 laps for these guys to race up until this point, and the race was over, and it was all but over. And Max was no way going to make up the gap that Lewis had gained. And for me, look, I've got. Can I go that lap 1 incident before we go back to the merits of the yellow car, the safety car, and the decision at the end? The lap 1 incident.
Is it Renault?
I'm pissed off at Max because it is the same dumb shit that he has done for the last 3 races. It's exactly the same as Brazil. It's exactly the same as the 2 incidents we had into turn 1 last weekend, and it was carbon copy. He didn't make that corner, and he didn't leave space on the outside for Hamilton. He didn't
make that corner. He didn't leave the track.
Hey,
he didn't leave the track. He was in the white lines.
Lewis went to turn in. He had the front. He went to turn into the corner and had to correct. And if he didn't avoid that accident, if it had been 2 Max Verstappens going into that corner, there would have been a collision. With 1 Max Verstappen and a Hamilton had to avoid it. And there was no way known that Hamilton was ever going to make it with that line that Max took into it. Do I think that Lewis gained an advantage by going off track and not giving it? Absolutely. But Max, those moves, you can't do them. And it's the same shit that we put up with for 3 races in a row that he hasn't decided to change. Max stuffed this in qualifying yesterday when he locked up his yellows and didn't get to start the race on the optimum strategy. Lewis got him off the line and raced the whole race and clearly had pace advantage the whole time. So if we look up until lap 54, Lewis had won it. The thing was in the bag and it was a procession for the last 4 laps. The fact that a safety car came out with 4 laps to go and then the preceding nonsense from the stewards and the race director came, I just think I can feel sorry for Hamilton and the way that went down because, like, we haven't even spoken about why 5 cars got let through for the safety car and not the rest of the other cars. And in the rules, they should have been given another lap to catch up to the back of them and stuff like that. Before we even go there, but the communication before it was very clear. No, we're not letting them through, which would have ruined Max's chance. But the race was over for him anyway. He had nothing to lose whether he pitted or not. And then for them to make a decision with half a lap to go in the eyes of safety that we just have to get this, I just have to get these guys finishing back on the race, ultimately ruined the whole experience for the fans. And the guys that I watched it with last night as well all hate Lewis Hamilton with a passion, but were very, very compassionate to his cause on the racetrack last night because he did nothing wrong. He had that locked up in the bag. Pressured by Red Bull by the bold decisions they were making, but then again, Mercedes chose not to give away track position when they probably could have. Incidents in these sport, and that's motorsport sometimes. I just think the way that the director handled the race was an absolute shambles.
Yep. Let's not forget also that there were a couple of protests launched by Mercedes against Max Verstappen and Car 33. Both of them were rejected.
But you can't change the result after the fact.
Yeah.
Like, from a sports standing, I can guarantee the head of it and all the politics and all the bullshit came into it at the end of it, and they sat down and they were like, we cannot change this result now. It's way too far gone in the fans' eyes. It's a shambles anyway. If we change this now, it's just going to create a whole other circus that we don't want to create. Unfortunately for Mercedes, they ended up on the wrong side of it, but they were totally within their rights to make those protests and get the outcomes they wanted, because they're probably right. If it went to a court of law, it'd be a very, very different outcome. I think Mercedes will walk away with it. They'll cop it on the chin for the betterment and for the sake of the sport. But, geez, Massey's got something to answer to. That guy is an absolute muppet.
Keep an eye out in 2022 for Lakeside Drive spin-off of Judge Judy of Judge Campy. Yes. Welcome to Judge Campy's Court of Law.
But it's not a good look for a fan. Like, I'm a fan, and this is, unfortunately, the politics and the BS that goes in F1 that as fans we inevitably have to put up with, and all the off-track stuff, whether it's Ferrari's got veto powers and have more influence over the whole organisations. Ultimately, we get dragged in this stuff and have to put up with it. I'd just rather it get fixed and sorted so that we don't. Or at least do it behind closed doors so it's not played out on a worldwide TV feed for us to have all the information that we need.
That's the issue right away, is not even 20 minutes after the the podium has finished. The word is dropped unofficially, then officially, that Mercedes are protesting. Let me just read this out. Article 15.3 allows the race director to control the use of the safety car. Article 48.12 not applied fully in relation to safety car returning to pits at the end of the following lap. 48.13 overrides it. Once message safety car in this lap is displayed, it's mandatory to withdraw safety car at the end of the lap. Therefore, Mercedes requests that the stewards remediate the matter by amending the classification to reflect the positions at the end of the penultimate lap. This is a step that the stewards believe is effectively shortening the race retrospectively and hence not appropriate. That is the decision, which was the second one, second protest, not about Max Verstappen being in the wrong place when he did come up alongside Lewis Hamilton a couple of times after the safety car had come in. He was like, oh, you want to go, mate? Let's go.
What? So it was a mistake that they pressed the safety car lap in. No.
The decision is once it's displayed, which it was displayed, then it's in that lap. The problem is, from what I can understand, is that I think those decisions were either made after, so the cars can go past, but decision was made after the safety car in this lap was displayed one way or another. I don't know, but
but where does Rule 39 come in, where it talks about once lapped cars can overtake themselves, all of them must do it, and the preceding lap must follow.
Does it say must?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they were talking
yeah,
about.
It does. Yeah, it does. I'm pretty sure.
Hang on.
All right. Well, let's keep going. Look, Tommy T, the bit of look, Abu Dhabi, we sort of hyped it up a little bit with the track changes. It looked like a better track overall in
definitely.
qualifying, but when it came to the actual racing, though, we had huge lulls. Apart from that, and obviously it's great that we have something to talk about, which is so exciting in how Max won, whether it's a good way for him to win or not. But what did you think of the overall changes to the track and how that played out during the race?
It's definitely an improvement, that's for sure. I think we're going to really see how it goes with the new cars. I think these cars have just kind of had their, I don't know, they've had their day. They're really hard to follow behind. And the turbulent air we saw was pretty evident with like Charles Leclerc when Max came out of the pits, those kind of things. Even Latifi at the end, I reckon turbulent air and dirty tyres was definitely an impact on him hitting the wall.
Oh, yeah.
I think these cars are just impossible to follow behind. So with the new kind of ground effect that we're working on for next year, the next regulations, I think this track might actually come into its own if you can follow closer through a lot of those sections. Because it was, and it is nice and wide in many sections, and you can do a lot of good moves if you can get close and follow close for multiple laps. But you could see that Max, when he was chasing the whole time, was like, I have to stay 2 seconds behind because it's just impossible to get closer. So there's no opportunity to challenge even if you do have pace. I think that's the issue that we've had for probably the last 4 or 5 years, really, when we think
one of the
about
things,
it. But
one of the things I quite like
the
about
United Arab Emirates. Why? Because of money, and the tracks generally suck, and whatever they do to this track ain't going to clean it up to be a good racetrack.
It's because there's not 10% banking. If Karun could get that extra 5% in on turn 9, that'd be good.
I won't be angry and cynical.
The one thing I like about the Abu Dhabi circuit is the pit exit. Obviously, it's very unique.
It's bizarre.
And let's talk a little bit about what happened with the virtual safety car and Max Verstappen, because Lewis Hamilton pointed it out, and Max pit. Obviously, it was a great pit stop. The Red Bull mechanics did an incredible job.
Spot on.
How they have done that all year has been amazing to watch, of course. But of course, in the pit area, which that still counts, you can go a little bit faster than the reduced speed of the VSC everywhere else. So instead of being 21, 22 seconds behind Hamilton, he ended up being about 17 and a half seconds behind because of the speed that he made up, that he just exited the pit lane. It's one of the good parts of this track, I suppose, Tommy T, when it comes to the design. But the strategy, though, Campy, how that plays into the whole of the race. And yes, I know, and we can talk, if you found Article 39, then please talk about it as well. But tell me overall your thoughts on this track and little things like that, which can make it a little bit more interesting, I suppose, because that's where strategy comes in and the teams can make an impact from the pit wall to help the driver.
Yeah, look, I think those little things are good and they're rarities in our sport. If you pit, you should lose time. Hamilton shouldn't complain about that because he had ample opportunities to pit when they were racing and when they weren't. So, look, yeah, it's cool. It's an interesting part of the track, but it was, we saw Leclerc go off getting distracted by Max Verstappen. That could have ended.
That was almost the decider right there.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of downforce. That's what we're talking about. You can see why Leclerc's car let go. And I think Max went off track at one stage when he was behind, must have been behind Sainz. Got twitchy and ran over the bar.
Yeah.
So if that had been Monaco, he probably should have got a penalty for that too, didn't he, Shommy? So for going off track and gained an advantage.
Did he gain an advantage?
Can I just say, I never ever
Oh.
thought I'd see the day, not since we started what was Oz F1 Lakeside Drive, where we would be sitting here going, look, I just don't know, well, at least two of us, I just don't know how I feel about Lewis Hamilton not winning this championship, because we were so, like when we first started this podcast, it was like, anyone except for Lewis is good. Now it's like, but he actually drove really well and he dominated that race. And, that is it deserved. Yeah. Tell us about Article 39, Campy, if you found it.
I've got it on my phone here, so... Sorry, give me a second.
That's okay.
Right.
Get the iPad out.
No, he's using his iPad to record.
Please don't
touch
laugh
the
at me
iPad.
like I used to do in kids when we had to read out loud in class.
Oh, good. This is a good...
If the clerk of the course considers it safe to do so and the message lapped cars may now overtake has been sent to all teams via the official messaging system, Any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap of the safety car. Key word there being any. This will apply to cars that were lapped at the time they crossed the line at the end of the lap during which they crossed the first safety car line for the second time after the safety car was deployed. Yes, I understood that too. Having overtaken the cars on the lead lap, and the safety car, these cars should then proceed around the track at an appropriate speed without overtaking and make every effort to take up position at the back of the line of the cars behind the safety car. Whilst they are overtaking, and in order to ensure this may be carried out safely, the cars on the lead lap must always stay on the racing line unless deviating from it it's unavoidable. Unless the clerk of the course considers presence of the safety car is still necessary, once the last lap car has passed the leader, safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. If the clerk of the course considers track conditions are unsuitable for overtaking, the message "overtaking will not be permitted" will be sent to all teams via the official messaging system. So I think it's pretty clear there that, and the other thing was, lapped. Any car has been lapped can unlap themselves. So I think it's pretty what. And we have these rules for a reason, right? Why are they not being followed to the letter of the law? Why? Yeah, look, anyway, I've said my point. I'm just, as a fan, I just don't like to see it like that. And it just reeks of stupidity. I don't really know what to say. I could harp on it and say it again, and I could say it 1,000 times till it's out of my system. Yeah, no, but I could say all the same things I've said 1,000 times to try and get it out of my system.
Well, look,
probably
here's
still be
some
really shitty and angry about the way that this race ended.
I wouldn't understand it a second time.
Ending cars under a safety car, go back to Spa. We classified the thing by running under 2 laps, so don't give me this bullshit that we have to get them back out in a race, Michael Massey, you tit. Anyway. But then if you take that, if you take Spa out of the equation, going into this final race would have looked very, very different. Lewis would have had
that's a good point, isn't it?
Lead,
Yeah, it's a good point. Luckily, we weren't decided.
And all he had to do was really secure a second place, and it wouldn't have been an issue for him. So, guess that Spa incident did the awarding half points did have an effect on the championship too. Interesting though. A fun fact, my mates told me last night that regardless of whether Lewis won last night and Max came second, if you went under the old scoring system, so 10, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the top 6 positions, Max Verstappen would have won this championship 144 to 141 to Lewis if Lewis had won last night. So just adjust those scores accordingly. So, yeah, that's a fun fact for us all anyway. So if we're going old school, Max will still would have won. No fastest laps or anything like that, which is probably not a bad thing.
That's applying the Felipe Massa should have won 2008 thing, and I'm here for that. I am. Yeah. I'm just on. I made a rookie error by opening F1 Twitter. It seems that Mercedes have lodged an intention to appeal after the second protest has been thrown out by the FIA. They have 96 hours now further time to see what's going on. Also, Michael Massey. Only 2 minutes ago, it's 6:49 a.m. here. 2 minutes ago, left the track, and so has Toto Wolff. So I love that we've gone to sleep and got back up again to record this, and people are only leaving the track now.
Does Toto talk publicly yet?
No, there's no media for him or Massey, and Hamilton is not doing any media either tonight. And look, we'll talk about Lewis in a moment with the post-race press conference. But I think we can probably agree that regardless of now all of this nonsense that's happening afterwards, that all we wanted as fans, and Campy, I think you alluded to it there, is whatever happens on track, it kind of stays on track. The politics of it, the protests, the nonsense, everything else is it's not good for our sport, to use the Simon Lazenby term, not good for the neutral, because what we saw as crazy as it was, the whistle has been blown, for want of a bit of a term, and it's done. Max Verstappen has been crowned, and that's how we see it. And look, the number one will be coming back to Formula One on a car next year because Max will need to sell bulk merchandise. Apparently, that's the only reason why he'll probably have that on his Red Bull. But what I thought was interesting, Tommy T, it was in the celebrations by Max is, I hope we can do this forever. I never want to go to another team. I always want to stay at Red Bull. We'll see how that ages in a couple of years' time when Ferrari come knocking. But from your point of view, though, Tommy T, you mentioned this earlier on, Sergio Perez, driver of the day. Kimi Räikkönen won because, of course, he did, and that needed to happen. It was very unfortunate that we didn't get any celebratory donuts by Kimi Räikkönen like Fernando Alonso we had all those years ago. And, of course, we'll talk about team by team still in a little bit, but Red Bull so helped by Sergio Perez. The guy did exactly what he needed to do.
Yeah, he was perfect, wasn't he? His defending and his taking back of that position was some of the best racing that we've seen probably for the year. His desperation to make sure that move stuck was just incredible, and he did it for long enough for Max to get back into contention, and then enough for him to get DRS and slingshot through and to the back of Hamilton's car. Incredible job from his teammate. Obviously, the circumstances were that he couldn't improve on fourth anyway, so he was going to be fourth regardless of his position in the race today. But he's had this attitude for the whole year. He understands how important this is to Red Bull as a team, and his position coming into this team was that of, you're here to help Max and help Red Bull win and take down Mercedes in this championship battle. And I don't know, we've always liked Checo. He's a super likable guy, and you just want the best for him. For him to kind of get his moment and his kind of impact in this championship like he has throughout the year, and this moment in particular was pretty great to see. And I think all the Red Bull fans, he's gained a lot of fans, I think, around the world for his contribution to Max's championship.
And also nice to be called out immediately that, Checo is a legend as it happened. We haven't historically seen that when Valtteri's done something for Lewis, for example. There's not been that immediate gratification. The culture maybe at Red Bull has changed since Daniel Ricciardo left. Campy, here's the question for you, and I mentioned this on the Discord last night, and someone brought it to my attention, which I'm kind of annoyed about because I can't get it out of my head. If Daniel Ricciardo had stayed with Red Bull, culture aside, could he have won a World Drivers' Championship this year?
I don't think either him or Max would have won it. They would have taken too many points off each other.
That's the answer I was looking for.
Neither of them would have been in the fight.
And that's why I think Sergio Perez was the correct choice for Red Bull for this year. To at least provide it. And look, the fact that he's now got the car together, he had his own setup going on. Hopefully going to next year, he'll be able to understand the Red Bull car in his own way so that he's up, straight away with it. I think it's interesting. Lewis's attitude at the very end of the race.
It was good.
Incredible. From him. He could have gone either way. I mean, he didn't bring his car to the grid at the end to sort of finish in that second position. Can't really blame him for that. I mean, he had a good crack on that last lap down the last straight. He had a good crack to take that position back. But I mean, Max was never going to let him through. He would have crashed out, to be honest. I think that was his kind of attitude going into that. He really held himself together, clearly upset by that. I mean, 7 World Drivers' Championships is an incredible feat. 8 would have been amazing. Could still happen next year. I mean, it's a good thing, isn't it, that we've now had a bit of a break in the Hamilton domination. He didn't win 2009, did he? Or 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, now 21. I mean, it's a good thing for the sport overall, but him being at this age, this stage of his career, Campy, how he handled this, I thought was incredibly gentlemanly, very much of the honouring of the Sir Lewis Hamilton part of Sir Lewis Hamilton. And also Anthony, his dad, the very wholesome content of Anthony really genuinely congratulating Max Verstappen and Jos Verstappen, and a bit of a dad hug as well. Dad of the day goes to Anthony Hamilton over Jos Verstappen.
Yeah, look, Lewis must have been in a tough spot, and we know he's carried on like a tip beforehand. I think back to the 2016 Rosberg battle and the way he handled himself in that last race was, look, in hindsight, you can understand in the heat of the battle what these guys are trying to do, but in hindsight, he handled it wrong. But last night, didn't do anything wrong for me. Obviously his dad was his consoling and said, look, this is the way to handle it. There's things happening behind closed doors. The best thing you can do is go out, be congratulatory to the fans and thank the team and do all the normal things that he does, whether it's genuine or not. For me, it was a step forward in that direction. He's genuinely trying to build a bridge between, make a difference outside of F1. So I think that he is really practicing what he preaches, and that is a good thing, because it would have been real easy to come out and go, you know what, F this sport and F Michael Massey. This is ridiculous, the crap he's put up with for 3 weeks. And I'm going into bat for him because I wanted to see Max win it on track, but Max wasn't good enough to win it on track last night. So, tough one, but he did everything right, so good on him.
I think Lewis is going to be gaining more fans as a result of just how he handled this loss. And if he does come back next year and win the championship or the year after, I think it'll be a bigger and better championship for it. It's only going to mean better racing and good things for the sport, isn't it, going forward? All right, let's go through our team-by-team analysis, because it is worth talking about everyone in a fair light. We'll start at the very back. 2 or 4 cars didn't finish from 2 teams. Latifi, Russell, of course. Now, with Latifi going to AlphaTauri in 2023 now, I'm sure Christian Horner was very happy indeed with what happened there. But Tommy, so you mentioned this. I mean, he was having a battle with Mick Schumacher, so that's worth saying that Mick Schumacher was, doing as much as he could, being the solitary Haas on track. But the off-track dirt, the dust, of course, the turbulent air, all of it contributed to him. It's not the first car we saw go off at that part of the track as well. Seemed to be the favourite sort of car magnet for it. But George Russell as well. I mean, he probably shouldn't focus on promoting a movie and just focus on tweeting more often during a race. It seems to be more interesting. What did he have to say on Twitter, Tommy?
I pulled it up before, but he was disgusted with how it kind of finished up, kind of alluded to similar things as Campy had mentioned. But I don't know, like, whether he's right or wrong, I don't think it's the time to say that. Like, there's time to congratulate Max, who he's grown up in and around in junior formulas. And, like, yes, obviously he's going into bat for his future teammate and his team that he's about to move to. So I'm sure that's a consideration. But, yeah, maybe not what I would have done or what I think is the correct thing to do maybe there. It's time for celebration, and we can have the discourse and other things later if he really wants to. But, yeah, he wasn't happy, was he? I do get it, but...
He's just listening to Campy and showing some emotion, to be honest. I think Campy, I mean, how does that play for you? I mean, his first tweet was all caps and say this is unacceptable. Follows it up by saying, all due respect to Max and he's a great champion and whatever, but to finish like that is no good.
Look, above all else, his opinion and the drivers on track, the 20 drivers who make up the sport, their opinion matters probably more than anybody else's. So it'll be interesting to see what they all come and say post race in the following week, if they have something to say about it. So I think they're all genuinely stoked for Max last night, and they consolidated everyone. I think there's a bit of camaraderie there. I think it'd be interesting to see what the drivers think about it, because at the end of the day, that's motorsport and these things happen. We see results thrown up by yellows all the time. And is it fair? No, but that's just the way it goes. So that's motorsport. We'll put that on a T-shirt, would you, Tommy? Jeez.
Yes, everyone wants that's motorsport. In fact, if Michael Massey had said, instead of that's an auto race. We've come here to go car racing. Toto at the end said that's motorsport.
I thought that was cheeky from Massey too. I was just like, Massey, don't inject yourself into that. You don't need to be making comments like that. Just stay out of it because it inflames the situation.
Yeah, and it's
makes
exactly
it worse.
what's happened.
And it makes me think that you're more of a dickhead than I thought you were last week too. Just keep your mouth shut. You got a job to do. Yes, it's hard. You're a referee. All global sports have these people. You are the man that makes deciding factors. You don't need to be mouthing off and making the situation worse.
Yeah, well, he did, and all of the Dutchies appreciated it. As I said, half the world's always going to hate what he did, but the other half is for it. At the end of the day, he's right. We're here for a motorsport contest. The problem is Michael Massey's here for safety.
We had 54 laps of a motor race. The last one doesn't really matter.
Yeah, there you go. That's the issue. But look, Williams, this is a season which was fairly good for them, of course. Some real ups and downs, of course. Passing this to Frank Williams, no good. A podium for George Russell in the half race, in the parade race that was the Belgian Grand Prix, at least. But this is a whole era of Formula One they will want to forget and move on very quickly, of course. They've got some extra time in the wind tunnel compared to other teams going forward for the next season. So it'll be very interesting to see where we end up talking about Williams in the pack for next year. Alfa Romeo, though, this was just doubly disappointing. Kimi Räikkönen retiring, Giovinazzi retiring, going out without any big, fanfare at all. Campy, it was a nice little tribute, wasn't it, that Formula One had for Kimi. It was great to see his family there and his kids. I mean, the sport's going to miss him, but at the same time, I think it is time for him to move on when he's unfortunately in a car that's just not performing at all and having reliability issues and not being able to really trust putting it into corners the way he wants to. As he said yesterday, he's done with the politics of it. He's done with the nonsense. He just wants to go racing. But for Alfa Romeo, definitely a season to forget for them too, don't you think? Yeah,
not how we wanted to send Kimi off, but it's what we expected from them. We didn't expect them to both have car issues. I mean, look, Kimi's brake-by-wire failure looked hectic.
Yeah, no good.
Looked hectic. At least he drove it off and didn't bring out a safety car. Giovinazzi, on the other hand, made zero efforts to get that car off in a place that was...
Good from him. Should have parked it on the track as well, actually, Gio, to be honest. You could have made a bigger impact at the end. Do a full Kevin Magnussen.
Alpha have been in this sport under the Sauber banner for a very, very long time, and they are committed to the future of it. And let's hope they get it right with some car design next year. They got a very capable driver in Valtteri Bottas who will take that team up the grid just on sheer raw pace that he has. And they got Guangzhou too, so they got a good cash injection, which will help them out financially. So they were, next year's, look, who knows what will happen, but let's hope their car's good and they're up there.
Yeah, Haas, Schumacher 14th, and Mazepin didn't start. Of course, he tested positive for COVID. Unfortunately for Fittipaldi, he didn't take part in a practice session, which meant that he couldn't be the reserve driver and actually jump into the car, meaning Haas probably gladly only had one car to focus on their disappointment. But 14th, I mean, a lot of other cars not finishing. 14th, not a bad finishing number for them, even if Schumacher was last. Again, in the same vein of Alfa Romeo and Williams, they'll have a little bit more time in the wind tunnel compared to everyone else. I can only imagine Günther Steiner has been totally focusing on 2022 when it was supposed to be 2021 at the beginning of 2019 when the rules started to come out. That's where the attitude would have been for him. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year with them, but more Günther on our screens is something that we desperately need. Aston Martin, Seb Vettel 11th, Lance Stroll 13th. Get us a pace deficit to a lot of these other cars, Tommy T. Almost nowhere yet again for Aston Martin. They obviously checked out for this season.
Yeah, definitely. You think they're just focusing on working hard at the campus and getting everything ready for next year. But they had no pace all weekend, did they? They were just in no man's land. It's almost like they just left all the extras at home and just kind of go, we'll just go with what we've got. We'll figure it out when we get there. Just borrowed some random spare parts from other people if they weren't using them and just painted them green, I think. Just see how we go.
Has this year been a failure for them?
Oh, I would say so.
I
would say so.
But I think Seb's probably done better than I would have thought, and Stroll's definitely done worse than I would have thought.
Seb's had some performances where he's outperformed the car, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think back to Turkey, was it? Where he got a second to Ocon, was it? So,
Hungary. You're very good at forgetting that specific race. It's the only race where you're like, what's the race where this happened? And the answer is always Hungary.
Because you mix up your rings every time.
It's like you've completely lost a mind blank in that. How can you forget Fernando Alonso's defending?
Stroll put a good move on Vettel last night.
Stroll did some good stuff up the back. The problem is when you're doing blue on blue
points
like that, and then outside of the points, what is the point?
Yeah.
Someone else who was outside of the points and just absolute weekend to forget was Daniel Ricciardo. McLaren finishing in 12th, Lando Norris in 7th. Starting from 3rd position, I was hoping a little more from Norris, but he just got his ass out of the way and was like, no, thank you. I do not want to be a part of this at all. Went into an immediate battle with the Ferraris and was able to at least take one of them, and that's only because he yeeted himself almost into their future world champion in Charles Leclerc. But we'll talk about Carlos Sainz in a bit. But I mean, the pace that I thought was back for McLaren just seemed to be a Lando freak lap for qualifying in a good way. I mean, all attention on 2022. Hey, it is about as interesting for Daniel Ricciardo this race, I think, as his upcoming hotel quarantine period for 2 weeks sitting in a Perth hotel. No real good at all for them as a whole. And it's such a real shame, Campy, isn't it? Because we got so excited for McLaren halfway through the year. Of course, the Monza win was fantastic. The pace that Norris was showing in Russia was then fantastic. But when Ferrari brought their upgrades and those development tokens, which they had extra to McLaren, that was all over. And 3rd position absolutely sealed in Ferrari's favour.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think, when Danny Rick needed to bank points of the team to get that 3rd place, he needed to do it early, but he's had some struggles. Yeah, McLaren have been nowhere since Russia, really. On all fronts. It's just a shame. Danny Rick got stuck behind Ocon last night and just didn't have the car. What did you think of that blue livery that they put at the back? I thought it was horrible. But
not sure how I feel about vaping being sponsoring Formula One. It's basically, we might as well just let Ferrari have, Marlboro back on the side of the car.
I think I felt like the orange was a bit different to what we've seen all year. I feel like the orange stood out a bit more than what it did. So
potentially a trickery of the design for the eye.
Maybe it was just the good TV that I watched the race on last night instead of my laptop. So
your iPad
That might be it.
Oh, this is what a race looks like. Jeez, these cars are a lot bigger than I thought they were.
I got a retina display. I thought that'd be all right, but obviously not.
Hey, if you want to sponsor us, we all need new MacBook Pros. Campy to do his word processing, and Tommy T and I to actually do processing. Actual stuff. Yeah, but I don't.
My HD camera, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I noted that you've bought it once. It went in the bin.
I don't have enough places to plug it in.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's an issue.
Bloody Apple.
Come on, Apple. But yeah, I didn't mind the livery. Their one-off livery of the year, though, goes to them in Monaco for golf. The golf livery was just like
get that back.
Big
next
yes year. From me. Look, we'll talk obviously more about this in our season review in a couple of weeks' time. But DR totally focused on next year. Let's keep that hustle in that direction, please. Alpine, Fernando Alonso 8th, Ocon 9th. Again, a good showing by the French outfit towards the end of the season. They've found this consistency like Ferrari. Obviously not as quick as Ferrari, but still hovering around these positions. Fernando Alonso would be very happy that Max Verstappen won the World Drivers' Championship and not Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure. His facial reactions, as I said yesterday, of Max Verstappen crashing into the wall in Jeddah was fantastic. Just more Fernando Alonso in my life is a good thing. Yep. And I still think he'd be a great teammate against Oscar Piastri, even though F1 Twitter disagreed with me and that they think the Ocon's better. It's okay to be wrong.
What?
It's okay to be wrong.
What?
Like, Fernando's going to be
so
43.
Right.
Ocon's a better. It's like, team, shut up.
Ocon
No one
is
cares.
not even close.
It's also the incorrect
It's all right.
answer.
So I've read the Bible too. The ignorance of people en masse is astounding in this world.
But for Alpine, look, again, a gorgeous looking car in terms of the paint. Not the green bit in the end with the Castrol livery, Tommy T. I'll give you that. It didn't look as good as it did last weekend for me, although you are wearing a green jumper, so maybe you've just fallen off the
I
back
don't hate green.
of an Alpine car.
That's true.
But Alpine would have been slightly happy with how they finished that season in comparison to how they started. Of course, the new technical regulations completely screwing them over from where they were at the end of last season. But Alpha Bloody Tauri, Yuki Bloody Tsunoda delivered a performance fourth. He was almost on a podium. Can we just have a proper discussion about this?
The guy likes the desert.
The guy does like the desert. He likes racing at nighttime under floodlights. And my favorite part of the commentary, I think, for the broadcast was Nico saying, well, it's a Honda. I can't believe they're leaving the sport. They just won the championship. And Jensen's like, didn't you do that? WDC burn. Love that a lot.
Yes.
But yeah, Pierre Gasly fifth, Yuki Tsunoda fourth, AlphaTauri. An incredible showing this weekend, has to be said. They've really got it together. It is, as Campy said a couple of weeks ago, definitely a sister team now. And it was enough to, it wasn't enough, rather, I should say, unfortunately, to clinch that fifth place from Alpine. Alpine finishing on 155 points and AlphaTauri on 142, most of which, apart from this weekend, those points were won by Gasly. But for next year, Tommy T, under the Red Bull Power Trains, sponsored by Honda, probably. Watch them come back to the sport again at some point in the next 10 years. A great showing for them. And and at the end of the day, have been most consistent Italian team outperforming Ferrari for most of this season.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think Yuki obviously has had his troubles all year, but if he continues to put in performances like that on random occasions, even if it is sporadic, but to be up fighting where he was a shock, but also like welcome surprise. Like we thought this guy was actually going to be good this year, and we were all kind of a bit disappointed, I guess, that he didn't really live up to the hype. He had the machinery, which you don't usually get as a rookie as well, and we just wanted to see more from him. So he's on his way. Fingers crossed this is what's coming next year from Yuki, because he is coming back. And yeah, maybe he can close the gap to Gasly in qualifying and race pace, which is what you want to see with your teammate, isn't it, Campy?
Yep, absolutely. Good on him.
Yeah, it's good to see.
6 out of the last 7 races he's qualified in the top 10, so that says something about his trajectory in this sport, which is a good result for him.
Yep,
and good result for AlphaTauri.
And shout out to Alex Albon, who's been helping him significantly. Alex Albon, just good guy Albon, to be honest. Obviously happy to be back in with Williams, but he was helping him before that announcement was made. So it's going to be the nicest grid on the team, isn't it? Williams next year. Looking forward to that before, of course, Latifi goes to Red Bull and replaces Albon as a Red Bull driver. Anyway, let's keep going. Ferrari, Carlos Sainz getting a podium. A wild Ferrari appears. Third position for him. Charles Leclerc in 10th, of course, because of the off that he had was a little unfortunate. We saw the rear of that car just lose it. It was almost like he was slightly distracted. You could see Charles's helmet look at Max coming out. And in that split second, the rear started to step out. A bloody great save, though. Well done, Charles Leclerc, for catching that and then not yeeting into the back of the future world champion. But for Ferrari, although, and I didn't mention this for Alpine, El Plan being on the back of their thing, I feel like the master plan is sometimes Binotto is just Alonso dressed up. I feel like it's gone to the fancy dress shop, put a wig on and some glasses. But for Ferrari's trajectory, though, going into next year is probably the bigger question and the bigger conversation, because we've seen now Red Bull throw everything at this championship, every bloody thing at this championship. I know they got Adrian Newey, and that's fantastic from a design point of view, but Ferrari seem to be chipping away to try and actually get back a team and 2 drivers that can both win the world championship, Campy.
Yeah, good showing for Ferrari in the end. Look, it'll be interesting. They all seem to be hunky-dory and love each other at the moment. Good teammates, good camaraderie. But as I said last week, if they are genuinely fighting for a world championship, that relationship will deteriorate pretty badly.
No salads ordered.
On track and off track when they're fighting for the one thing that they both want. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Ferrari sits next year. They've got a chance really to make up the gap that they want to. It's a fresh start for all teams, and you would expect the big three, the big three manufacturers being Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari to be up there, and probably a McLaren too, it being an independent team that still rely on Mercedes power. But the longer that McLaren-Mercedes relationship goes on, I think they'll have they'll get the technology and the software to get the same sort of levels of power efficiency that the top team does. So, yeah, it'll be good for Ferrari. It'll be interesting to see where they sit. Bring on, where's our first race? No, it's not Melbourne. Is
Bahrain.
it Bahrain? Jeez. We're not testing there, are we?
It's not far away. We're straight into, obviously the winter break for Formula One, and then testing. I believe testing's still happening at Bahrain. So that's, it's the first track of the season. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm a bit over Barcelona. Sense. Don't really care that one way or another, to be perfectly honest.
Good test track, but.
Yeah, absolutely. But,
Not when it's snowing.
And who knows what happens with these cars, right? At least, we know that the weather will be good enough in Bahrain, hopefully, to make sure we can just figure out what's going on with these cars. Nighttime, daytime, all that sort of other stuff. It'll be interesting to see. Mercedes.
Big year for Binotto next year as well. This will be, he took over the reins from Aravameni, and he's firmly, in my mind, he's put all his cards into the development of this new car for next year.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And that will make or break.
Many team principals have.
Yeah, that'll make or break, but not particularly Bonotto's. I mean, he's missed races to go back to the country because, he's had visa issues, allegedly. So, he's put all his eggs into next year, and if he fails, if that car fails next year, then where's Wally's gone?
Oh, Tommy T, please add that to the list of Campy sayings. Yep. Mercedes, Red Bull, look, we've spoken about this. I want to talk about the second drivers a little bit. We've already spoken about Perez, who ended up not finishing the race. Unfortunately, he could have been on for a podium as well. But Valtteri Bottas in 6, he just struggled again. Tommy T, it's a bit of a shame for VB in his last outing. Of course, Mercedes not wanting to celebrate anything after that Grand Prix had finished. The checkered flag had fallen. They've won the Constructors' Championship, let's just say that. So as we said a couple of months ago, it could go the fact that a constructor could win and a different driver from a different team wins the championship. That's what's happened. No real surprises there.
You can go back and I have that on record as well somewhere.
Yeah.
Hence why we say this is a B-grade title, because Mercedes, if it was the title they wanted, that they say, that's the most important, they should be celebrating, clearly not.
Yeah, but for Valtteri Bottas, again, not the final race he would have wanted. He wasn't in a position to do something like Sergio Perez did. Nico came out and said, Valtteri's been the best second driver all year, compared to Perez. And I'm just not sure I agree necessarily. I think they've both had instances, and maybe before this race I probably would agree with Nico, but showing from Perez on old tires to hold up a world champion who is like, I need to get past this guy, let's go. The way he drove that and kept it within bounds, and there was nothing, too pushy or too aggressive about how he drove that car, but with the age of the rubber and the king of tire preservation, Red Bull lucky to have Sergio Perez on track at that point. I know it didn't end up running out to that point because there was a 11 to 14 second gap built by Hamilton, and we can discuss that another time. But for Perez, very good from him, Tommy T. I think Red Bull will be pretty happy that they locked him in for next year.
Yeah, he's been great, and he's done exactly what he needed to do. He had a shaky kind of start and middle, but he's found moments to do what he needs to do as a teammate. I would say he's done kind of the more teammate things on track, whereas Bottas as a teammate has just taken points off Max. And that's probably what he's done, if you think about it that way. With how the constructors shook out, you can clearly see that any time Bottas had an opportunity to take points away from Max, he did it and that's how he's contributed to that kind of teammate battle, I think.
Yeah, and Campy, if we rewind, and you probably can't listen to this episode anymore, which is a good thing, back to Mexico 2019, where seventh felt like a victory for Checo, and we were like, all right, mate. Fast forward to this time last year, or thereabouts, just after Abu Dhabi, where we weren't sure about where he was going, except for he didn't have a drive for this season, I should say. And the announcement of him going to Red Bull, we were happy that he found his position there. And I think we're now happy again. I think everyone can be happy again that he is driving the car in a good way. And it's important, I suppose, for Red Bull to have that steady hand when it comes to helping them win a championship, isn't it?
Yeah, he deserved that drive. He deserved that drive because of the results he's getting in the Racing Point. I think we were all stoked for him in saying that. As a second driver, probably, and the car that's underneath them, they probably should have won the Constructors, Ultimately, I think Bottas probably had a better year. Just because Hamilton really, that whole lap and a half saga between those two, Hamilton was he had a lot to lose if he made contact with Perez.
Oh, for sure.
And he was very, very aware that he had, that 8 or 9 second gap at the time, and he was very conservative in the way that he raced Perez, whereas Perez was very, very aggressive on the other end. So I think if Lewis had his time again, he would have just put the car in the place where it needed to be and not worried about anything else. So, but he had a lot to lose if there was an incident with Perez, and I think that was on his mind. So I wouldn't read too far into what Perez did last night, because he's still acres behind Max Verstappen and the potential in that car, which is not a good sign for me. I don't like it when drivers have the potential, a car up the road. I know he lost time because he was helping out his teammate, but, they clearly can't match it with Lewis and Max, these other two drivers. And if there's 20 seconds on that car with half a race distance and they're not, that's a big gap in motorsport, and I just don't think they cut it.
But it's all right when Daniel's behind, obviously, because it's different.
Exactly. Yeah. Obvious.
Tommy.
Hello.
Tommy.
Hang on. Sorry, Tommy. Can you just come over here for a second? Hang on. Tommy, just come here for a second, mate. Just come here. Sorry, Campy. Just give me a second. Are you okay?
Absolutely.
I'm not calling it Daniel. I'm calling it Campy for his inconsistencies.
Yeah, but the fact that you brought Daniel into it just doesn't look good for
us. I had to go where it hurts, didn't I?
Okay, all right. So not wrong. Yes, Campy, idiot.
I could make a case for Danny Rick last night. Got stuck behind a dickhead Frenchman. Yes, Danny Rick had the pace, but unfortunately, we go to stupid places like the United Arab Emirates, where we have stupid racetrack. How many Emirates states are there in that area? Is there 5 or 6? And we go to all 5 of them to race Formula 1 tracks, and 4 of them are rubbish. Why do we even go there? And don't even start me.
So didn't have to. You started yourself.
If you want me to build a case of Danny Ricciardo, he got stuck behind a dickhead Frenchman on a stupid track that our Formula 1 drivers shouldn't go to. And it wasn't the money that these guys are offering to pay for the final race of the year, we wouldn't be even looking at it. Put me in charge and I'd be going to the United Arab Emirates. Sorry, lads, we don't want to race here because your tracks are rubbish. We're going because we're a sport of the people and a sport of the fans. We're going to give them what they want. We're going to get turbocharged V6s. We're going to get loud noises, good tyres that don't run out, and we're going to give the fans and the people what they want. But unfortunately, we're ruled by money. So,
and that's the podcast. It's time to end.
It's really hard not to be cynical at the moment. You've done shitty about last night.
You've done a good hour or so of not being cynical.
I've had an hour of sleep. I waited for a result for this stupid bloody protest, and I missed it. I had to get an hour kipper in, and anyway.
Well,
it's just life.
That's
Luckily,
it.
I'm getting married and got stuff to look forward to for next year. So
that is
maybe I won't watch or return.
Yeah, isn't your wedding on or your honeymoon or something on at the same time or near the Oz Grand Prix?
Come on, mate, I'm not that stupid.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. That is our team by team analysis done for 2021. What a year. This is how it has fallen out. We'll start with the B grade championship, as Campy has said at the back of the grid. 10th, Haas on no points, which is no surprise. 9th, Alpha on 13 points. 8th, Williams, 23. 7th, Aston Martin on 77. 6th, AlphaTauri on 142. 5th, Alpine, 155. 4th, McLaren, 275. Ferrari, 3rd on 323.5 points. Red Bull Racing, 2nd, 585.5. And Mercedes, 613.5. And of course, the championship that kind of matters, I suppose, more so. 21st, yes, 21st, Nikita Mazepin. 20th, Robert Kubica. 19th, Michael Schumacher. Mick Schumacher. I keep doing that. Mick Schumacher. 18th, Italian Jesus. 17th, Latifi. 16th, Raikkonen. 15th, Russell. 14th, Tsunoda. 13th, Stroll. 12th, Vettel. 11th, Ocon. 10th, Fernando Alonso. 9th, Pierre Gasly. 8th, Daniel Rick on 115 points. Charles Leclerc, 7th on 159 points. Lando Norris in 6th. Carlos Sainz in 5th. Sergio Perez 4th. Valtteri Bottas finishing in 3rd with 226. Lewis Hamilton, of course, 2nd on 387.5 points. And Max Verstappen, 395.5 points. That is your 2021 championship for Formula One. And it has been a bloody good year to be part of this community. And I say that in a really good way because everything that we have done, you have supported us immensely. And that includes one of my favorite parts, the fantasy names. And Campy, I know you didn't use your Mega Drive like an idiot, which is good news for me. Here we go. Here's the fantasy names that I've picked out.
Oh, no.
You moron.
I'm just gonna start sitting in this warm glow of victory. I know how Max feels.
Amazing.
Fantasy names: Massey, from the bin to the top shelf. Max, Raymond M. The King is dead. Long live the King. Alex B. Demolition Derby, as in Abu Dhabi. Good. Steen N. I really like that. Sassy Massey Saudi Circus. That's very good.
That is very good.
Kiss My Yas Marina. Josh L. Checo's big multi-year contract. Jonathan C. Ted's arcane details. David Hill. Checo. Enough said. Aaron B. Didn't win fantasy, but Max sure is world champion. Haley H. Scared of the finale. Lauren R. And the one where Latifi decided a World Drivers' Championship. IRT. Well, thank you to you for naming your fantasy teams. Some incredible names all the way through the season. As we mentioned, the best team name will get some merchandise, and we will go through that in our review of the 2021 season, pick out our favorites. But let's go through this little part of it too. In third position in the fantasy league is Tommy T, finishing 68.
Just fell away, didn't I?
In second position is Thomas J. Camp on 46, and I cannot believe this because I had the worst team and the worst luck for most of it, but it's good because it was 400 races this season, so I was able to come back. Finished in 43rd. It's nowhere near the front, but I'll take it. 43rd for me. Thank goodness for that. Campy will come back at some point next year and go, yeah, well, I won again. The second year on the trot where I won.
I didn't use a Mega Driver or a Turbo Driver at all.
Wow. You didn't change your tyres.
Dear.
You didn't go in the safety car and change your tyres.
All right, Lewis.
It's going to be Max. I'm going to thank.
Are you going to go to the stewards and complain?
I'm going to thank the fans for all that they've done for fantasy names this year, and I'm going to be humble and walk away.
Are you? Goodness, that's unusual. But hey,
can I just say quickly to Discord, you guys are a cracking community that we get to sort of talk to. I don't participate enough just because I'm not on my phone anywhere near what I probably should be, but reading all the messages and stuff that comes through on a variety of things, it's a cracking community, and it'll only grow and get better. But hey, you guys own that. It's not ours. It's yours firmly, and the conversations are cracking too. And we are just really stoked that we get to be a part of it, I think, and it's one of the best things about doing this podcast for the whole year. We don't really feel like we've got ownership of it. We do it, but yeah, there's little gems like this where the community steps up and is actively involved, and it's good to see. I very much enjoy reading it, although I don't participate too much. So yeah, it's great. Or
over 230 of you are part of that community, which is incredible. Certainly, it's a great place. One of the things I really love about it too is that it is a safer space than F1 Twitter, and everyone is exceptionally respectful of everyone else's opinion. And there are some big opinions in there at the moment, of course, and will continue to go on for some time. But look, thank you to you for listening, for watching, for supporting, for buying merchandise all over the world. We've shipped merch all over the world, which is fantastic. We've had people like Freya and Dave Munnis join us on the podcast from the community. As Campy said, it's not about the three of us, it's about you. We started back in the day with Oz F1 with the mission to spread the love of Formula One to more Australians. Little did we know, of course, A, that Drive to Survive would start, and B, that our second biggest audience resides in the US. So a massive shout out to you for wherever you're listening. We bloody love doing this, and we are really overwhelmed by your support. 2022 is going to be an incredible season, not only for Formula One, but for Lakeside Drive. Of course, we're going to have some real interesting bits of content. Of course, our panel is growing and growing, which is amazing. We'll hopefully have some great interviews for you to listen to next year as well. But of course, this is the end of the championship, which means it's the end of our pre-drinks and our race review episodes. We will be doing absolutely a year in review in a couple of weeks' time, but we will be having a bit of a break from some content now. Look, as I said last weekend, I'm heading to the UK tonight. In fact, to go and do Extreme E, and I know many of you have followed me across to that platform as well to listen. I can only tell you that we're lining up some incredible interviews, and I will have to try very hard not to fanboy myself sitting in front of some of these people. But the only reason I'm doing that podcast is because of this podcast and the success here. So massive thank you to you for that. Tommy T, of course, we know that people like Ash as well and Lewis who have supported us, even if they make me look like a ghost in the reels that I've done recently, it's like applying all of the filters. But people like that and stepping in is real, just making that community element stronger.
For sure. Definitely. Big props to those guys. They're doing a great job, and it's made our lives a lot easier, and we can just focus on doing this, and it's just broadened our reach, and it's just really showcased what we do to more people, which is excellent, and we're very grateful for that.
We're very grateful for all of you.
We will do a season review. We'll give out some prizes for best fantasy team names and the winners of the fantasy. Who actually won the fantasy league, Jim?
Oh, it doesn't matter. James won.
James beat us. It's all going to hear.
Send myself some merch. Look, I look forward to Tommy T designing some. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be ready for Christmas. For some campy sayings on t-shirts, but certainly for next year. But that's it, guys. Time to end. As I said, there won't be some content for a couple of weeks. We're going to have a bit of a break. But a massive thank you to you for watching, for listening, for rating and reviewing if you're on Apple Podcasts, for subscribing on YouTube, for following us on all of the socials, for joining us on the Discord server. 2021 was an incredible season. It wasn't a boring end. The season, the story rather, still has a little bit to play out. But we'll be here in a couple of weeks' time to talk about it and all in review. And then it'll all be winding up for the next generation of Formula One in 2022. We can't wait to do that with you as well. Have a wonderful Christmas wherever you are. Stay safe as well. And we'll chat in a couple of weeks for our 2021 season review.
Go ahead, Toto.
You need to reinstate the lap before. That's not right.
Toto?
Yes.
It's called a motor race, okay?
Sorry?
We went car racing.